Hello and welcome to episode 9 of In Retrospect, a series where I look at games from my childhood and see whether they stand up with the element of nostalgia removed. Today we're looking at a game that influenced many a childhood, Pokemon Red, Blue and Yellow. I'll specifically be looking at Pokemon Yellow, as this was the first Pokemon game I played, so without further ado, Pokemon Yellow was released in the UK in June 2000, and while I was a little late to getting a copy for myself, I had played on my friend's version of the game in the meantime. I didn't really know much about Pokemon at this stage in my life, so I tried to train Pikachu to as high a level as possible and beat everyone with him just like Ash did in the anime. This obviously proved to be impossible, as Pikachu just isn't that great. Anyway, onto the retrospective. You start out your journey by choosing a name for yourself and your rival, and then wander off into the tall grass. Almost immediately you're thwarted by an old man, who proceeds to trap an electrified mouse in a small spherical prison. When you follow him to his laboratory, he offers you a Pokemon that was caught earlier, but his asshat of a grandson decides to take it for himself. This leaves the professor with little choice but to give you the Pikachu he just caught. The first rival battle ensues, and while your rival tries to be strategical, it just doesn't work at this point of the game, and spamming Thundershock wins out every time. After going on a fetch quest for the professor, you're finally let loose on the world to begin your Pokemon journey. I immediately caught a Nidoran, knowing that this would be the only Pokemon I need to complete the game in a fairly swift manner. After a little bit of grinding, I went for the second rival battle of the game. This one is probably one of the hardest, as your rival's team is usually much higher level than yours. However, with the power of Nidoran, I got through. Next up we have Viridian Forest. This area is a great way to introduce a few mechanics. Firstly, exploration and navigating through areas using landmarks. Secondly, trainer battles that can leave you battered and bruised upon emerging from the other side. And thirdly, random encounters. Viridian Forest serves as an introductory level of what's to come. Getting through a cave or route in the game and always knowing where the nearest exit is essential to your team's survival.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
Once you make it to Pewter City, you may notice another palette swap. This is something I really loved about Pokemon Yellow. All of the towns are named after colours, and the colour of each town is the same as its namesake. A small detail, but a nice one. As you try to progress further, you're told to check out the gym in Pewter City, introducing the main progression mechanic, gym battles. Brock is a tough opponent in Pokemon Yellow, as Pikachu is weak against Brock's team, and Brock's team is immune to Pikachu's attacks. Once more though, Nidoran delivers. Through some careful strategy and overwhelming power, Geodude and Onix were smited under Nidoran's mighty leers and double kicks. Mount Moon is the next area to traverse, however this one is far more treacherous. On the first floor, a moonstone can be found, and with that we have Nidoking. We no longer need any more Pokemon. Moving further through Mount Moon, we come across Team Rocket, who are here to steal rare Pokemon for some reason. In Yellow version, we get a battle against Jesse and James as a tie-in to the anime, with their team being the same as in the show. They spout their famous line once they're beaten, and we can move on to Cerulean City. Before going to the gym, some more training is required, so we head north only to run into our rival once more. He's sporting a few new Pokemon, but no one can stand up to the king. After forcing him to scurry off with his tail between his legs, we head over the Nugget Bridge, defeating 6 more trainers and gaining that sweet XP. At the top of the bridge we come across a boy who says he's useless at training Pokemon, and he gives us his Charmander. After seeing Bill, we receive the SS Anne ticket, and we can finally move on to Misty, Cerulean's gym leader. Misty's Pokemon are weak to Pikachu, however they are far more powerful. Granted, her Pokemon don't have any particularly strong moves aside from Bubble Beam, but Starmie has been consistently top of the meta pretty much since day one. After beating Misty, and assuming your Pikachu has a high enough friendship value, you can get yourself a Bulbasaur from the woman who rescues sick and injured Pokemon. This is the only place in the entire game that uses the full sprites on the Pokemon in the overworld, a feat that wouldn't be seen again until Generation 3. Onto Vermilion City and the SS Anne. There are tons of trainer battles here, but you can leave at any time to heal at the Pokemon Center and then come back to deal with the rest of the trainers. There is another battle with that damn rival, and he seems to have improved somewhat since never mind, it's another washout. The next gym is Lieutenant Surge, and while the game had the idea that I would pit my Pikachu against his Raichu, just like in the anime, I decided to do the smart thing and use my Nidoking to utterly destroy him. Another town complete and another gym leader owned. It was time to continue my adventure. But what's this? Officer Jenny wants to give me a Squirtle. And with that I have all of the starters. And this was the key selling point for Pokemon Yellow. You need to do a little backtracking in order to progress, and unless you've played the game before, it can be a little tough to know where you're supposed to go. There are obstacles in every direction but one, meaning the game gently shepherds you where it wants you to go. This does work quite well, but in the age before the internet, it would have been really hard for a child to figure this out. Rock Tunnel is one of the last major transitional areas that you have to traverse. The challenge here is that you can't see a thing unless you're using an emulator, a Game Boy Advance SP, or you're tilting the Game Boy screen in just the right way. You could of course use Flash, but who has the time to find that and then waste a move slot? Not this guy. Emerging from the other side of Rock Tunnel, we make it to Lavender Town, and this place is a prime example of how to use minimal resources extremely effectively. The track for Lavender Town is so basic, yet it portrays a feeling of sadness, disparity and mourning more effectively than many pieces of video game music in recent memory. It's also infamous for the creepypasta of the same name. When you enter the Pokemon Tower, the music just keeps on giving with another creepy rendition in 8-bit greatness. This is interrupted, however, by that damn rival, who has evolved his Spearow and caught himself a Shelder and a Vulpix. With that resolved, it's time to leave this spooky tower, because I can't see the ghosts and my Pokemon are scared. Heading west, we come across Celadon City. There's a huge tower here, and at the top of it I got my own Eevee, which I immediately evolved into Jolteon. Too bad for Pikachu, I guess. I like the gym here, because it's full of grass types, meaning Nidoking gets a well-earned rest and Charmeleon can do the heavy lifting. Well, almost. After another fairly easy gym battle, I decided to kill some time with a little gambling. But what's this? A suspicious looking man in front of a suspicious looking poster. How suspicious? Upon entering Team Rocket's hidden base, we're treated to yet another insanely good piece of music. It just manages to amplify the puzzling nature of the spin pads and the maze-like structure of the base, whilst also letting the player know that the inhabitants are up to no good. Just before reaching the end of the base, we get another battle against Jesse and James before battling the big kahuna, Giovanni. His ground-type Pokemon aren't really a match for Wartortle and combined. The real challenge of his team is Persian. the absolute crit machine. You see, in Gen 1, your crit ratio was directly related to your speed, and since Persian had such a great base speed and used moves with a high crit ratio, it was almost guaranteed to crit every single time. Anyway, we pick up the night vision goggles and head back to the Pokemon Tower to see if we can't go Derek Akura on these ghosts. First though, a quick trip to the Pokemon Center computer. Sorry Pikachu, sorry Bulbasaur, you just aren't needed. Back to Lavender Town to do a little ghost busting, and this is where the game starts to get kind of dark. Earlier you were unable to pass this point due to an unknown force telling you to get out. Using the Sylph Scope reveals that the force is in fact a Marowak that had been killed by Team Rocket during their hostile takeover of the tower. There is also evidence to suggest that your rival's Raticate was killed after the battle on the SS Anne, which explains his appearance at the tower. After thwarting Team Rocket once more, Mr. Fuji gives you the Poker Flute, opening the way to the next town and allowing you to continue on your journey. This is a common tool for RPGs. Blocking player progress until a particular item has been acquired is a simple but effective way to guide the player in the direction they're meant to be going. Before heading south to Fuchsia City, we need to clear the Sylph building of Team Rocket. This is another Team Rocket base, and the music again matches perfectly with this atmosphere. Once we get to the end, we're intervened once again by that damn rival. His Pokemon are now almost all fully evolved, and his team is almost complete. This is the first true battle against your rival, and marks the first time that simply wasn't enough. After healing, it was time to take on Jesse and James once more, followed again by Giovanni. Giovanni's team is also much stronger this time around, but still not enough to get past the incredible. It was time to head to Fuchsia City, home of the Safari Zone. The Safari Zone is home to many rare Pokemon, all of which are nigh on impossible to catch. This was a major problem with Gen 1, in that the Pokemon found in the Safari Zone had such a low capture rate that they weren't really worth going for unless you were trying to fill the Pokédex. This was somewhat fixed in later generations, but I think the idea was pretty good, even if the execution wasn't that great. I did a little grinding before facing Koga, but this proved to be pointless as his team was awful. He had 3 Venonats and a Venomoth, which all went down to Charizard and of course. The interesting thing here though is the gym itself. The premise is that there are invisible walls, but due to the limitations of the hardware, the invisible walls needed to be disguised with this striped pattern that tricks the eyes and kind of gives me a headache, but still, good going Game Freak. After defeating Fuchsia's gym leader, it was time to head back to Saffron and face Sabrina. Sabrina's team consists of the Abra evolution line, all at level 50, so they are a bit of a challenge. Alakazam was the second best Pokemon in the game at this point, so he can be a real menace to take down. Charizard managed to make short work of the trio, and so began the long journey back to Pallet Town in order to surf south to Cinnabar Island. Or, you know, you could just fly. Once you land on Cinnabar, you find that the gym is locked and you have to explore the ruined mansion in order to get the key to the gym. This reveals a little more of the backstory for the game in the form of a few journals lying around. They tell the story of the discovery of Mew and the eventual cloning of Mew 2. Cinnabar Mansion has another great soundtrack. As you make your way through the derelict building, you don't really know what you're going to find. This becomes more unusual when you start running into Ditto, a Pokemon that shares remarkable similarities to Mew. Once you find the key to the gym, it's time to take a quiz on Pokemon. Each room has a question that must be answered correctly in order to avoid a battle with the trainer in that room. However, if you want your Pokemon to get stronger, you need to battle and gain XP. So I answered all of the questions wrong, powered up my Blastoise, and went on to challenge Blaine. Blastoise was quickly thwarted by a Confuse Ray. Although he managed to defeat Ninetales, Rapidash stomped him down. But all was not lost. Was still on hand to save the day. After making mincemeat of my favourite Pokemon, god damn, look how majestic that thing is, it was time to get my last badge. Viridian City, the first town you come across after starting your journey, is the final location on your quest to get the 8 gym badges. On arrival, you see the spin mats that have been present in all of the rocket bases, and once you reach the end, a familiar face is waiting to greet you. Giovanni, leader of Team Rocket, is also the gym leader in Viridian City. It was time to get to work, putting Team Rocket out of business once and for all. This was it, in the city where I first met. He was about to attain his greatest victory yet. No, his. Lived on 1 HP and countered with his own earthquake. Was down. Blastoise took over and drowned the enemy in a sea of his own creation. The battle was over. The day was won. Team Rocket had been defeated. It was time to head to Victory Road. The final transitional area was about to be overcome. But first, Gendror appears once more in an attempt to ruin my day. With his team now complete, he poses slightly more challenge than before, and Jolteon saw me to victory. It's time to move on and claim my rightful place. Victory Road is the most difficult of all of the in-between areas due to the boulder puzzles. You need to do them all correctly in one run in order to get through this maze-like cave. If you change floors, the boulders reset, so unless you've gone the right way, you need to do it all over again. It took me around 20 minutes to get through Victory Road, which is way better than my childhood time. When I was 8 or 9, I didn't even manage to get to the end of Victory Road. I actually had to get a friend to do it for me. Finally though, I made it out to the other side, and we get another amazing musical piece. This tune gets you psyched for the challenge you're about to face, and it really is a challenge. Unless of course you have the most supreme Pokemon to have ever graced the earth with its presence on your side. I bought a bunch of full restores and revives just in case. When you challenge the Elite Four, you have to beat all of them one after the other with no breaks, so your only respite is found in items. Thankfully I hadn't spent any money on Pokeballs throughout my journey, so had plenty of money left to buy what I needed. The first member of the Elite Four is Lorelei. She specialises in ice types, which are notoriously terrible. All but one of her team is part water type, so Jolteon was able to one-hit almost the entire team, aside from Jinx, who was dealt with by Charizard. Lapras was the only Pokemon to give me any trouble, as it used a Confuse Ray. Confusion in Generation 1 was a guaranteed kill for the NPCs, as it would basically always hurt you but never them. Pulled through for me yet again, securing my place against the next member, Bruno. After healing my team, I switched Blastoise to first place and challenged Bruno. Bruno uses fighting types, but for some reason has 2 Onix. I assume this is because there just weren't that many fighting types in Pokemon Yellow, and Onix does kind of suit the room that Bruno resides in. Jolteon dealt with the fighting type Pokemon, whilst Blastoise finished off the pair of Onix. Next up was Agatha, the ghost type trainer. Again, Generation 1 was the gift that kept on giving. There were no abilities in Pokemon Yellow, so none of her ghost types carried Levitate, meaning I could just demolish the team with Earthquakes. Finally, we move on to the last member of the Elite Four, Lance. The Dragon Master Lance has a flair for the dramatic, and his team is certainly no pushover. Unless, you know. With a few Thunderbolts from Jolteon and a couple of Ice Beams from Nidoking, I was ready to take my place as the champion of the Pokemon League. But what's this? Someone beat me to it. Could it be? That damn rival! This battle is the absolute pinnacle of the game. The music is just beautifully composed and the whole thing feels incredibly tense. His whole team is close to or above level 60, and it uses the one weapon that's been yours since the beginning: versatility. Even Nidoking couldn't stand up to my rival's team alone. It took a combined effort from all of my party, even those that were underleveled. They were useful for reviving and healing those who were needed most. His Alakazam was able to almost one-shot Nidoking with its ridiculous special stat. His Sandslash did one-shot my Nidoking with its Earthquake. This was the toughest battle in the game, and rightly so. Nidoking proved to be the absolute champion here though, by getting through confusion twice in a row to defeat his last two Pokemon. Man, it brought a tear to my eye. When Professor Oak appears to congratulate you, the music slows right down, giving a feeling of relief after a long, hard slog. Your Pokemon are entered into the Hall of Fame, and the game's story is complete. There is only one piece of post-game content, but it is a big one: catching all 151 Pokemon. This includes searching for the legendary birds and catching Mewtwo, as well as glitching yourself a Mew for completion. It's impossible to complete the Pokédex alone without glitching. This was always the intention from the beginning though. Satoshi Tajiri, the game's lead designer, wanted players to come together to trade Pokemon. This was the original reason for the games having separate versions. However, now I think it is less about the trading and more about the money. But that could just be the cynic in me. Replaying Pokemon Yellow has given me a real appreciation for the games that followed, but also made me realise why I fell in love with the series in the first place. The sense of wonder and adventure while traversing the land of Pokemon was at the forefront of my mind the whole way through. There are some obvious problems with the game that need to be addressed though. For one thing, the item bag having a limited number of slots is a problem that comes up time and time again, and the disorganised nature of the items menu can be a pain to get on with. There's also the problem with the PC, in that if the current box is full, you can't catch any more Pokemon. So imagine making your way through Cerulean Cave, getting to Mewtwo, fighting it for 20 minutes, only to be told you can't use a Pokeball. These are problems that were all fixed in later installments, but it can be off-putting for someone wanting to go back and play the first generation for the first time. There are also multiple exploits and glitches that can be used to gain an unfair advantage, or even just flat out break the game. I will say, however, there are very few, if any, glitches that can be encountered through normal play. A lot of work was put into releasing a finished and polished product, and that really does show when you play the game. In conclusion, Pokemon Yellow stands up almost perfectly to the way I remember it. It's a childhood classic that will always hold a special place in my memory. I am thankful that the later versions of the game are far more polished, but it's nice to go back to where it all began every once in a while, just to see how far we've come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and write down your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and subscribe to see more content if you haven't already. I've been Lenning, and I'll see you next week.